to Stories with Brisco and Bradshaw. I would be Bradshaw. That would be the WWE Hall of Famer, Oklahoma's favorite son, Mr. Gerald Brisco. And we have got a member of one of the greatest families in wrestling history. And not only that, we've got one of the best guys in wrestling history. I am so excited to have my candy sharing fried chicken buddy come on here. He's been in the business. He's done everything. He is Mr. Scott Armstrong. Scott, welcome to the show.
Thank you, buddy. I appreciate you guys having me on here, man. I've been looking forward to this since the phone call, whenever that was. And I really do appreciate you guys having me. And everything you just said, hell yes, is really true.
we had so much candy in the production meeting. At one point, Triple H goes, I'm going to have to put a dentist on retainer. we bring in like gobstoppers. We bring in sprees. We had boxing candy.
I'm surprised Vince McMahon let you guys in with all that sugar.
Believe me, we sat in the very last row of the production meeting. We had production sheets over top of the big, huge bags of Sour Patch Kids. We knew if the boss saw it, we were done.
Oh, yeah, we were done. He'd have thrown us out. We had so much candy back there. He'd have thrown us out.
But at least he would have thrown your candy out with you. So.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. Yes, that's true. That's true. It got to the point where dudes would grab an empty Solo cup and come over to our table before the meeting started and just line up trying to get candy from us.
So guys would be sitting there, Jerry, in the meeting with their cup, and it would have nothing but like sprees or some type of candy in it. Guys would like.
Most of the guys are spitting in the cup. You guys are eating candy out of the
That's true. Exactly. Oh man, yeah, the good old days, man.
Well, Scott, man, it's great to have you on here. You know, your family. Wow, I mean, what a family, and I've been privileged to know each and every one of you. Sometimes a little too long, and sometimes when you guys were little guys just still pooping in your pants, you know, around.
That just happened this morning, Jerry. So
yeah, nothing's changed with you.
No, man. I tell you, my dad. Your dad's your dad when you're growing up. And you're a wrestler's kid, and you don't know the difference. Your dad is just on TV, and so later in life, when I turned 22 and started wrestling, then I started traveling with him, and it was the territory days, so it was 6 days a week and in the car with him a lot of hours. And to start finding out about him and his friendships in the business. And it blew my mind for him to tell me stories about you guys when you guys were young in the business. And it was just so cool to hear. And so I say that to fast forward to this. I finally get hired by WWE. I'm already in my mid to late 40s. And I'm in the back of the plane, on every flight in the middle seat. And I'm not saying a word about, change my seat. And after a while, I see you and you said, hey, come in the Sky Club with me. Come in. And I walk in and it's like, oh my God, a Sky Club. Man, this is unreal. And you kept telling me, don't worry, boy, you'll be here long enough. You'll earn all the, the credit to get in here for free and all that stuff. Okay, great. So then I remember the very first time. This is back in the day when everybody would bring their the little DVD player pop-up gimmick, like a 9-inch or whatever it was. And so everybody had one of those. Well, naturally, I had to go get one so I could watch movies on the plane. And I get upgraded to first class. It was my first time. I'll never forget it. I thought, oh, this is the best. And they put me up front and I sit down right next to you, Jerry. And I went, oh, this is and you went, ma'am, could you bring us a couple of whatever it was you were drinking? Dude, we get off that plane and I've gotten so hammered that I have left my DVD player in the back of the seat of I still hadn't. That's the truth. I said, that friggin' Jerry Brisco, man, I can't, I come home, my wife goes, hey, did you charge your DVD? I said, man, honey, that Jerry Brisco, I swear to God.
That's the reason I was over with all the James boys' wives, man.
Yeah. Hey, let me tell. I'm sorry, boys. I don't know if I'm going off the deep end or if you have a method to your madness.
We got no method.
But no, we got no methods at all. We got a lot of madness, but no methods.
So my very first show in WWE was in Cleveland. So I fly into Cleveland, and the late Mickey J, God rest his soul, man. He met me at the back door, and so we. He introduces me to people I don't know. I see people I do, which Jerry, you, and so a couple of things about this first time. Referees had earpieces, and I'm in the ring, and all of a sudden you go, all right, ring the bell. You're the voice in my ear, and so I hear ring the bell, and I ring, and now. I've spent a career in the wrestling business from 22 to 45 to finally get hired by the company I always wanted to work for. And there I am in the ring. Needless to say, I am a nervous wreck. I'm just trying to remember the finish. And all of a sudden they go into the corner and the camera is right there. And you go, I remember one time me and your daddy, dude, there was no way, back then we couldn't talk back to anybody and I couldn't say anything. But before the match started, I'm standing there in the corner and I'm at attention and I'm really trying to be, businessman Scott. And you go, hey, you got me? And I just gave a little nod. Now the first guy's coming to the ring. And you said, hey, now look, don't make a big deal out of this, but your fly is about halfway open, not all the way, but about halfway. And so I just thought, oh dear God, what the, this has been on TV and all in my head. And so as I kind of put my hand where I'm checking it, you bust out laughing so hard in my ear. I went, yeah, I'm going to fit in here, man. This is awesome. Oh, God. Well, so then let me tell you, that night we get to the TV hotel. And so me and Mickey, we wait till the end. You were timing the show. You had to wait to the end, Jerry. And we get to the TV hotel in the next town. And as we walk in the door, Bruce Pritchard is sitting on a sofa in the lobby. And you say something about, Snavitz or whatever. I mean, you're giving him crap. And he starts giving you crap. And you're literally saying, okay, as soon as I get my room key, I'm going to deal with you. And as soon as you got your room key, you just turned around and in full fast-paced stride, dropped your backpack and just dove on him. And the couch flipped over in the lobby of this 5-star hotel on my first night with the company. And I just looked at Mickey and went, oh, my God, man, we need to help. And he goes, oh, no, this is every day. Oh God,
Scott, I opened up the door one time in a hotel. Same thing, nice hotel because the WWE's putting us up pay-per-view or something, so they put us up in a nice hotel. Everybody's there, and I open the door, and there's Bruce and Jerry wearing amateur wrestling headgear. And they're looking for Kurt Angle. It's like the Angle. It's like the storyline back in the day where the Hart Foundation's looking for Sean. They're like looking for Kurt Angle. I don't think you want to find him. I really don't. I really don't think you want to find him.
You don't.
Can you believe Kurt wouldn't come to our room? He would hide out for Bruce and I. Yeah. The Olympic gold medalists who won the gold medal with a broken freaking neck didn't have the conads to come to visit.
Hey, I do not blame him at all.
Scott, one time we're in Germany and I wake up and I got my knuckles all busted and my elbows all scuffed up and I thought, oh no, I got in a fight last night. Shit, this is terrible. And I thought, I hope it wasn't too bad. I'm so embarrassed. So I go down to the bus and I don't remember what happened. I'm just sitting there and I'm trying to hide on the bus, which is impossible. Guys are walking by and nobody's saying anything. I thought, well, that's must not have been too bad. Then I look and Gerald Brisco's sitting right across from me and his knuckles are scraped up, his elbows. We had fought each other. We were wrestling in a parking lot the night before.
Oh my God. Yeah, a lot changed since then, hasn't it, in the wrestling business?
Oh boy.
You think?
It's just kind of growing up. But growing up in your family with all your brothers there and your dad being a star, when was it? You said you're in a car and you realize your dad, but when was it at school when you, hey man, my dad, he's not only on TV, but he's something special on TV. Where was it? When was it that happened to you?
So probably in high school. Like once I started high school, look, you're in. It was ninth grade through 12th grade, and look, and you've gone from middle school into high school. You're already second, and I was the oldest child, so I didn't have anything to go by how it was going to be in high school. And I just remember around a whole bunch of dudes that you know at that age you want to impress them and all that. And I didn't have to say a word. This one kid goes, "Hey man, isn't your dad Bob Armstrong?" And I went, "Yeah, as a matter of fact, it is." And dude, I was just automatically accepted. And so I realized, wow, man, he's a bigger deal than I see him as. You know what I mean? He's dad. And look, we always enjoyed watching him. And we lived in Marietta, which is about 20 miles out of Atlanta, I guess. And Atlanta was the big city. And so as I got to 10th grade or 11th grade, I ended up getting a car. And then and I was told on Friday night, you never drive into Atlanta to the city auditorium to watch wrestling ever. And so, yes, sir, yes, sir, yes, sir. And every Friday night, me, as many buddies as I could get in the car, we would go. And as soon as this match was over, we would haul ass back to Marietta because I had to drop them off at their cars and get back home before he did. So that I said, "I'm home, Dad. Yeah, I'm good." He just didn't want us, he didn't want us getting into Atlanta because he knew we'd get into some trouble. And
well, that city auditorium had trouble written all over it, inside and out.
Scotty, that's awesome. You would sneak in to watch your dad wrestle.
Well, I paid at the front door like everybody else, but yes, we never told. As I got old and had kids and everything, it came up one time, and I told him, and he started laughing. He said, "Why didn't you ever come?" And he said, "Damn, I wouldn't have done as many jobs if I knew you're in the audience."
You could have changed his career around. Well, I know your mom, and your mom was such a lovely lady, and she tried to insulate you guys from all of Bob's friends like me and the Fullers and Roddy Piper, guys like that. But she couldn't do it 100% because we had to have that road time there. But what a wonderful lady your mom was, and raised you boys like she did. But yeah, your dad was always your parents and your dad especially was always so proud of you guys. I remember the first time that he actually allowed some of you guys to come in backstage. I think the whole damn Army was there that day. But guys came in the Omni right after it was just opened up, the first Omni there, and he introduced you one by one, and all you guys had that smile on your face, man. We just got into the candy kitchen there, man. But that had to be a thrill for you guys,
Yes.
But your mom has so many accolades coming toward her for being the mom that she was to you guys.
Thank you for saying that, man. She was something special. She had ended up with 5 wrestlers. My dad.
Wow.
Right. Wow.
My dad always said, "Hey, she raised me,"
and they all can wrestle. They all.
He literally loved her till the very end. And I mean, look, she was at the end of her. Not to go on a depressing ride here, but at the end of her life, he was taking care of her every minute of every day. And 8 weeks after she passed away, he passed away. He had cancer the whole time, and he never, he'd say, "Oh," but he would still come to my house and get a workout and sweat. And I'd say, "Here, Dad, let me spot." He goes, "No, I got it. And I remember about 2 weeks before he died, he was staying out at Brian's house. Brad's, I wish. He was at Brian's house, and he said, "Son, it's about an hour drive from the beach out to where Brian lives." And so he said, "Son, never stop working out." And he said, "I don't mean you got to go to the gym and lift weight, but never stop moving." He said, "Because when you stop moving, you're done." He said, "So just know that." And I said, "Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir." And, he had, at the time, it's the last thing I paid attention to. But since he's been gone, I think about that. I try to work out every morning, and I think about that a lot. Don't stop moving, man. And my my mom. So we always said she had the very best wrist lock in the history of any business. Because, dude, look, you got to understand, and I'm sure you do, say a 10-year-old, and nine, this was the ages 10, 9, 7, and 2. Brian was 2. Road Dog was 2. He was the youngest. And so you got those 4 kids. And remember back in those days, you didn't have cable television. So there were 3 channels. And if you stood on one leg with the tinfoil in your hand, you got a 4th channel. And so as soon as wrestling, it was 1 hour a week, and we would watch it. And our dad was on. As soon as it was over, dude, we were flying off the coffee table and doing what kids do when they watch wrestling. And man, back in those days, parents would swat that butt, and my mom would grab. I mean, she would grab us. Believe me, we had it coming times 10. But nowadays, we used to, before she passed away, we said, "Mom, you'd be locked up in jail 30 ways from Sunday because the way you whipped our butts, man." But she meant force to mind. And you know, Jerry, Dad, back in those days, we would get this talk every time we would go out around wrestling, because he knew we were hellions. You know what I mean? We were just boys. And he would, in the car, before we got out of the car, he'd say, "Now, boys, I want you to understand one thing. When we get out of this car, you represent the Armstrong family. And you represent it like you're a man. You don't walk out there and act like a stupid kid. You don't do any. You're an Armstrong." And we all would say, "Yes, sir," before we got out of the car. And so I hope you remember us as being well behaved, because otherwise we got our ass whooped.
No, I don't remember that part of it. How much older was your brother Brad than you, Scott?
I was older than him by 1 year and 1 month.
Oh, you know, wow, I didn't know that. But you know, John and I are still trying to figure out how you were born older than your dad.
Yeah. Hey, Scott knows best.
But anyway, when your brother started, was he the first one or was you the first one?
No, Brad was the first one, and this is an awesome story too. So Brad graduated from high school. Dad had just moved down here, moved the family down to the Pensacola area. I want to say 78 and or 79 maybe. But anyway, Brad moved down here his senior year of high school and finished high school down here. And 3 weeks after he got out of high school, he had gotten a job at a little grocery store, a little mom and pop grocery store. And so my dad walked in there to buy something and heard the manager just dog talking Brad. Just, "What are you doing? My God, how stupid are you?" And Brad was always the meek, quiet one of the, and Brad would just, Brad just ducking his head, and Dad saw that. And Dad said, "Hey, Brad, tell him you quit." And Brad went, "Oh, Dad, this is my boss. This is," and he said, "Tell him you quit right now." And he went, "Dad," and he said, "Tell him if he wants to see you again, he can watch TV." And Brad just looked at the guy and went, "Hey, I quit." Brad, he knew exactly what that meant, man. And literally like 2 weeks later, he was in the ring and had his first match, 18 years old. July 4th, as a matter of fact, 18 years old, he had his first match.
So he had a whole 2 weeks of training.
Yes, and that's the truth. But look, hey, when you break in with guys, I think his very first match was like Dennis Condrey, Norvell Austin. I think Randy Rhodes was here at the time. But when you break in and Dennis Condrey's across the ring from you and Norvell Austin, I mean, my God, man, that's just,
it's a world of difference with second and third generation guys just have a leg up on everybody else. I mean, you at that time he had spent already 18 years in the business.
Well,
he may not have trained, but he had spent 18 years in the business.
Yeah, when we were down here, we would go into the ocean, and it'd be knee deep, and we'd be taking backdrops and doing spots and tag team and all that. And I'll never forget one time, and we're all just teenagers. I remember walking up the beach and Dad going, "Every one of y'all are better workers than I am right now." And we just, "Woo, let me buy some boots."
So how did you follow your brother Brad into it? If
I went to college. Yeah, I went on to college, and so about 3 years, and about 3 years of college, and then I said I can't do this anymore, man. I wanted to wrestle since I was in the fourth grade. I mean, that's the truth. I always said I'm going to be a wrestler, and I was always laughed at because I was the skinny little kid that, I was the least likely of the family to be a wrestler. And but I wanted to do it, man. It was my dream, and I'll never forget this too. We were riding in the car. Brad was the front seat, Dad, me in the back seat. We're driving to a town, and I'm in the back seat. Man, I'm blowing man. I'm gonna be the world champion. I'm gonna do, brand new to the business, and anybody that will listen, let me tell you how great I'm gonna be and how I'm gonna change the wrestling industry. And I'll never forget my dad going, son. They actually said this at his funeral. I'm sorry. He said, son, this business can be a lot of fun, but at that time, I'm 178 pounds and 6 foot, you know what I mean? And back then big guys made money, not little skinny guys. And he said, it can be a really fun business, but with your size, you need to learn every aspect of the business. You need to learn how to sell tickets, put the ring up, referee, wrestle, understand what the finish is and how they go into them and where the referee spot needs to be. He said, you just need to understand all that, and you can have a really fun ride and make a little money along the way. And guys, I'm here to tell you, in my wrestling career, which August 23rd, I think was 39 years, and since my first match, and I literally helped put up the ring. I sold tickets. Me and my wife sold tickets right at the front door. I was the announcer for Continental when it first started on TV and on all the live events, and I wrestled and then refereed and then produced. I've literally done, you know what I mean? And somebody said, Scott, you should write a book. I said, it'd be called Under the Radar, because that's where I like it. I don't need to be you don't have to tell me nothing. I lived it. It was awesome. 2 great kids. You know what I mean? The wrestling business. I mean, what else? If you love something, right? You know the deal. And man, this has just been, it's been a dream, man, from a little kid on to, look, hey man, today I'm on a friggin' podcast with Jerry Brisco and JBL. Come on.
Dang right.
It don't get no better.
Yeah,
you dang right.
Hey, I don't know how well you would remember this, but your brother and my brother, they set a ratings record for at the time on WTBS Championship Wrestling from Georgia, when my brother was champion, and he was coming into Georgia. The champions are booked all over the place, but he's based out of Atlanta, of course. And so they came up, Barnett called Jack into the office one time and said, Jack, we want to work a TV program with you. We don't know who to do it with. Well, Jack had respected that Bullet Bob so much. He said, Bob has that son over there, Brad Armstrong. He said, that's who I want to work with. Jack, he's just started in the business. Jack said, I don't care. I want to take him. I want to have his first title match. So but Brad's first title match, he had Jack go out there. It's basically an unknown, right, Scott? I mean,
yes.
Brad's an unknown, and here's a world champion. He handpicked Brad Armstrong to go. They had a match that's probably still to this day would stand up against any match. They set a ratings record, all-time ratings record, the most people ever in the history of Georgia Championship Wrestling was watching that match. That match set Brad on fire, where he elevated himself from first event to main event everywhere that Georgia Championship Wrestling was doing.
Yeah, but that's how
the rating was so high.
That's how good Jack was, though, Jerry. I mean, Jack was unreal, man. He was that good.
Well, you got to have a dance partner out there. Brad more held up.
Scott, I 100% agree with you. I have so much respect for Jack and for Jerry Brisco, but your brother, I saw him come to Bremen, Germany one time to wrestle Fit Finley for, I think, the light heavyweight title. I think it was. It was 7 or 8 rounds. It was to this day, one of the best matches I've ever seen. I remember sitting in the back watching this because I'd heard so much about Brad. I'd never been in a territory with him. I'd never been in Japan with him. I was always in Texas. He was somewhere else. So finally, I got to see Brad against Fit, who I know can go. And I'm hearing so much about your brother Brad. I'm sitting in the back thinking, I can't do that. These guys are good. It was anybody who saw that match, I don't even know if it's recorded, will tell you that's one of the best wrestling matches they've ever seen.
So Fitz told me this story. I'll tell you this. Brad comes back from that tour, that Germany trip, and Brad says, "Hey," I said, "Hey man, who'd you work with?" He said, "Their champion. His name's Fit Finley." I don't know him, And Brad said, "I didn't know him either, but my God, he's one of the most stiff. He beat the hell out of me, man." And I said, "Really?" So anyway, fast forward about, I don't know, 6 months to a year, and we were working Atlanta TV, and me and my brother Steve just getting beat every week on TV in 4 minutes, and all of a sudden, Brad comes and said, "Scotty, did you see you're in a single match today?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Did you see who you're against?" And I said, "No, I don't know the guy." And he said, "Scotty, it's Fit Finley. That's the guy that beat the shit out of me, man." And I went, "Oh, geez. Oh, come on." And he goes, "No, man, you got to think." He said, "Go talk to him and get your match all straight." He said, but then let me talk to you before you go out. So a lot of people don't know this. Me and my brothers, like if we knew we were going to have somebody that we could possibly have an issue with, we would start trying to get our head right before the match. And I don't mean just warm up. I mean, whatever happens, it just happens. That was the redneck in us. And so Brad, here comes Brad about 2 matches to go. I'm in the whole third match waiting to go, and I'm stretching and I'm getting my net. And Brad says, "Hey man, get your head right for this. I'm not kidding you, Scotty. Get your head. I'm not kidding you." Dude, I get in the ring and I'm so ready to fight a human being. And I've never seen Fit work, so I just know he's stiff, but I'm ready to be stiff back. And we lock up, and I swear to God, Fred and Ginger couldn't touch what we did. It was the easiest, most smooth, everything smooth. And I come back through the curtain, and Brad goes, "Are you okay, man?" And I went, "Dude, you told me you told me he's stiff, he's light as a fast." My God. And here comes Fit, and I just threw Brad right under the bus. Right. He just told me how stiff you were, and Fit went, "Did I touch you?" And I said, "No." And he looked at Brad and he goes, "Why would you tell him that?" And Brad goes, "Well, when I was in Germany, you hit me, you hit me so hard for so long." And he goes, "Yeah, like in the first minute of our first, it was rounds, right? Wasn't that the deal?"
Rounds, yeah, it was rounds. Yeah.
He said, "In the first minute of the first round, you hit me with a forearm." He said, "I've never been knocked out in my whole career, and I couldn't understand where I was in the ring." And he said, "So yeah, I thought that's how you work. So I got stiff with you."
Yeah.
The best, man, Fit Finley. But yeah, it's look, I do agree with what you said, JBL, about the generational kids. A lot of times, generational kids just look at Kurt Hennig. My God, man, there was, I mean, just so smooth, and the Guerrero boys, and that, you see that and think, man, but Brad really, he had my dad's timing, and he had and plus 6 nights a week across the ring from Dennis Condrey, on the job training, literally at 18 years old. Holy man, it's a sink or swim for sure. But if you rise to the occasion, then you are afforded the luxuries, just like Jerry was saying of his brother saying, "Give me him." And then they tear the house down. You know what I mean? That's just the stuff that you wish you could go back and watch. That's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Your dad is, few guys, you always see legends come to the back, and there's difference in legends. It's like difference in old baseball players. There's great legends, and then there's Babe Ruth. There's different, there's different level. When Bullet Bob came back, it's the first time I ever met him. I'd never met him before. I waited in line to meet him. I think he's the only person I waited in line for, because I thought, this is good. This is cool. Yeah, this is Bullet Bob.
Dude, he loved.
And and by the way, he was beyond nice. He's like, "Hey, I'm a big fan of yours. I watch all that." No, you're not. That's okay. I don't care.
No, he did. He watched all the show. I mean, we were on the road, me and Brian both, and then when we'd come home, he and my mom lived literally right across the road from me, so I could be at their house in 2 minutes. And so if I cooked a big meal, I could just run it right over there to him. And as soon as I would see him from coming back off the road from TVs, he'd say, "Man, I watched that show. you know who had a great match? He would just start putting it over. And you know, as it time went on, I was able to tell him, Dad, it was so cool for me to see how you mentally progressed with the business, because you know, you guys know the business changes, it just does. And he mentally changed with the business. He understood, like if he had watched AEW the other night and saw Will Ospreay do 42 flips before they ever touched each other, he would have said, wow, man, that's different. There's a place for that on the card for sure, because it's entertaining. And he would have rolled with that. Whereas a lot of old school dudes, as you know, would go, well, that's crap. You know what I mean?
That's interesting. That really is a divide between the two. You know, there's always the group that our generation was better. These guys suck.
Yeah.
You know, there's always the disgruntled old guys. Then there's always the guys going, I don't really get it, but there's big crowds and it seems to work.
Yeah. That's my very first tour with WWE in England. John Laurinaitis had come to me. I don't know if that's a bad word you say on your. Do you edit that out, or I don't know how that works? But anyway, he said, so he was the boss at the time for me, and he said, "Hey, look, you've been in the business 100 years. When these guys come back through the curtain, let them talk. But when they start to separate, go to them and tell them what you saw and what they could make better and what you liked." And I went, "Hey, they don't know me." And he goes, "No, they know you. You know, because I again didn't get hired till I was 45." And so I did that. The very first night, I did it all night. And the last match was John Cena. And so he comes back through the curtain and he goes, "Okay, what do you got?" And I went, I was great, man. And he goes, No. You've stood, I've watched you tell everybody one at a time, every one of them, what they did, you know, what they could improve on. He said, "So what do you got?" And I said, "Dude, look, you're obviously doing everything right." I said, "What I see in the ring is, I mean, if I'm being honest, there's a lot of places that it's lacking, but then I see that crowd and I know who's the person that put those asses in the seats and it's sold out. Dude, you can do no wrong." He just started laughing. I said, "Man, literally, I told him, I said, that's wrestling. That's the first match can tear the house down and be on the mat and doing all of it. But by the last match, I want to see some guys punch each other in the mouth. And you know what I mean? I want to see some wrestling." You know what I mean? So there's a place, to me, there's a place for the flippy stuff. When I saw it the other night, I'm watching it and I see him and the other guy, and they literally, it's into the ropes 8 times a piece or something, and they're flipping over each other. Nobody touched. And when they came to the it was like, hold up the applause now sign. And literally half the people, and I mean half, in the crowd stood up and clapped, and the other half sat there like, really? Yeah. And so that's kind of where we're at in the world in general, not just in the wrestling industry, in the world in general. I mean, look at the elections, half and half, right? So I feel like there is a place for stuff like that. I just don't. Back in the day, I couldn't have done one of those flips anyway. So it don't matter.
Hey, one time Rod was sitting in the back and he was watching a bunch of young guys practice their flips. They're doing all kinds of stuff. And they said, "Rod, what are you doing?" He goes, "Looking at a bunch of shit I ain't going to take." They ask him, they go, "What would you do if they wanted to do that?" He goes, "Tag John."
Yeah, there you go.
You ain't tagging me. Hey, Scott, why did Brad get into the wrestling business earlier? You said you wanted to be a wrestler since you were real young. Why did it take you? What took you so long to go to college and all that first? Just before you decided I want to go in this.
So in high school, so when we Jerry, you probably remember this, in the early mid 70s, Dad came down there and worked that territory for like a year, and he moved the whole family, which we never moved with him. He always did his commuting, and so we all moved with him.
I got a great story about that if you'll remind me.
It's okay. And so there were tennis courts right in the middle of our apartment. We kept the house in Georgia. We just rented an apartment down there, and the kid that lived next door played tennis every day. And one day said, "Hey, come play tennis." And I did. And I wasn't horrible. And so we played. And then when we moved back to Georgia, I went to high school and played tennis all 4 years. And so I never, I just thought, well, I was working at a bank in the bookkeeping department my senior year. And so I was just, Dad always said, don't get in the wrestling business. Just stay with banking and try to go up that ladder. And, that's never where my heart was, but it was just what you do as a kid. And Brad in the 9th grade started working out and going to the gym and training hard. And needless to say, 2 skinny little kids that look the exact same in high school, our bodies just transform. Mine didn't transform at all. I stayed a skinny kid playing tennis, but he just kept working out and he got bigger and bigger and bigger. And then he had kind of talked about he wanted to wrestle his senior year, but he didn't really pursue it like I did. Jerry, when I literally said, Dad, I want to do this. I want to train. And he just said, yeah, you're just not big enough. I went ahead and Bill Ash, that just passed away, God rest his soul.
Yeah, Bill Ash. I got all my boots for Bill.
I literally called and said, hey, I want a pair of wrestling boots. And he said, okay, well, let's get the ball rolling. And I had the boots sent to my dad hadn't even said I could wrestle yet. I mean, nothing. And he came home. I just told this story to my son a few days ago. He came home and opened the door and looked down at my feet and said, what the hell is that? Because it had my initials on it and everything. And I, of course, 2 inches higher because of the skinny calves. You try to cover up the calves.
Of course. Absolutely. Yeah.
And he said, what the hell is that? And I went, oh, they're my wrestling boots. I'm breaking them in. He said, well, I don't know why. And just walked on out of the room. And while it crushed me, it didn't defeat me. I literally I would wait till he left and I'd put them on and wear it because I wanted them to be broke in. First time I threw a drop kick, man, that was in my head. and so, I don't know, Brad just, he just excelled. And it's funny because Jerry, after he first started wrestling, they were big, kayfabe was huge back then. I mean, it wasn't like now you punch a button on the internet and you see anything and everything. And so he'd come home, he wouldn't, if I asked him 1,000 questions, he just didn't even want to answer them. He didn't want to, he stayed true to the game, man. He's straight up. In my very first match, right before I walked out, again, nervous wreck, 22 years old, I'm tagging with Brad. And I said, and I'm about to walk out and I look and there's my dad. And I said, hey, Dad, you got anything? And he said, yeah, just stand on the apron and watch your brother. And I said, okay, yes, sir. And then it's the best advice I've ever gotten. I did just that. I stood on the apron and I watched him. I watched his footwork. I watched it. And, when I started in a little bit of an angle as a tag with him. And so I was able to do that 6 nights a week and just learn, you know what I mean? Just over time, there were guys like Rip Rogers came in and he was a showman, you know what I mean? But he could also mat wrestle. Adrian Street came in and, he was a showman and could also shoot a little bit. And so, there were guys that, Tommy Gilbert, remember Tommy Gilbert?
Tommy, yes, sir.
He brought that. So after I did that whole tag run with Brad in my rookie years, Dad was the booker and he brought in Tommy Gilbert to work a program with me for like 6 months. And so I had gone from old Southern tag spots, hitting the ropes, high, off the top, blah, 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 to Tommy just grounding me and not, he was already, I was 23 or maybe, and he was probably 45 at the time, and he was slowing down. But in my mind, come on, man, let's go. And I'll never forget riding back from a town saying, man, Dad, he don't want to do anything. He don't want to. And man, Dad goes, boy, you better shut your damn mouth. You ever say a negative word about Tommy Gilbert again, I'll pull this car and beat the hell out of you. You got me? And I went, what did I say? He goes, that man will teach you more about wrestling, but you got to shut the hell up and listen to him. He will teach you about the wrestling business. You're just sitting there running your mouth about a man that can work circles around you, that has laid the ground. I mean, he just lit into me. And I went, yes, sir. Dude, I may cry telling you about it. 6 months later, Tommy just came in for 6 months. When he left, I hugged him and cried and thanked him because he did. He taught me when he passed away. I cried and called his son and said, "You don't even know, man. That guy made a difference in my career. He really did. He made a huge difference. He never got the exposure that he truly deserved."
No, he didn't. Thankfully, his son come along and carried that name out to be a real respect. But Tommy was so fantastic. Who was the guy, Scott? Because you come up during the era that the golden age to a lot of people, a lot of big stars. Who was the guy that you kind of looked up to besides your dad and your brother that you looked up to and said, "Man, I want to pattern my career after this guy"? Because you were around so much great influence at the time.
So, look, I remember getting off the school bus and meeting Chief Jay Strongbow in our driveway. And I was just a little kid, and my dad going, "Hey, boys, y'all know who this is?" We were like, "Oh, my God." You know what I mean? Because wrestlers didn't come to our house. It's just that simple. But Mr. Wrestling #2 was huge in Atlanta.
Huge.
And so he was somebody I looked up to. But Jerry, I would say this if you weren't on this podcast, Dory and Terry Funk and you and your brother were like, man, you guys were gods to us growing up. You just were, because we were brothers and we wanted to be you guys. You know what I mean? We wanted to be wrestlers. At that time, there wasn't, not like my baby brothers. "Oh, you didn't know." There wasn't a bunch of that. It was, you tell somebody, "I'm going to come there on Friday night. I'm going to beat your ass." And that's how it was. And it was wrestling. And so you and Jack's work and the Funk brothers, their work, and you just, as children, hey, man.
That brother bond kind of struck
it did.
Because your brother, I can see that, yeah. But,
it did, man. And like,
and then you got to know him, and all that went to hell.
He got to know you that he thought, "I want to be like the Funks."
Or I want to be like Jack. He was a nice one.
Yeah. Well, that Jack must be a good man.
Oh, dude, it was such a listen to go home after that first weekend with WWE, to come home and tell my dad the whole story about you, Jerry. He just loved it, man. He laughed so hard. He said, "Yeah, I remember that guy, man." It's funny because I could tell him that and it would spur 10 good stories. You know what I mean? This one time. And then he started into a story that I went, "Hey, Dad, are you sure you want to tell me that story?"
I got to work with that guy.
Yeah. Well, yes. Well, Jerry, what was the story you were going to tell? Do you remember?
Oh, yeah. When you guys first moved down here, Bob was still finishing up in Georgia, and I got fired for Fred Ward's town, which meant I'd worked in Atlanta on the weekends, and on Monday, then I'd get in the car and we'd drive from Macon, Georgia, down to Tampa. Well, your dad was just starting down there, but he's finishing up in Georgia. So when I had a little blue Mercedes convertible, that really, your dad really liked traveling in, because we could put the top down, we could screw around, all that stuff. And your dad loved doing that, just screwing around on the road. So we got the ice chest and loaded it down in the back of that little two-seater Mercedes. It was all ice chest and two jabronis and the damn car. So we're
what's so bad about this, Scott? If you get stopped in a convertible with an ice chest full of beer in the back, you've got zero excuse.
Well, we didn't get stopped.
Sir, officer, I don't know whose beer that is.
Right.
Somebody said we stopped at the Waffle House, and somebody just said that an ice chest in the back of our But anyway, we finished the damn ice chest. You guys had just moved into this apartment, and when you said it, there was a tennis court real close by. So, and over there on Waters Avenue, and that apartment complex was huge, John. Just one of those really gigantic ones. Yeah. And the damn thing had 3 or 4 tennis courts. So we're sitting there, and I said, "Bob," I said, what kind of car is your wife got? It was that blue Cadillac or great
Cadillac. He had a red one, and then he had a gray Chrysler Imperial. Yeah,
yeah,
big, huge.
It was a great
like
Chrysler. He had a Cadillac, and your mom had the Chrysler.
Yeah.
But he told me the car, and it had Georgia plates on it. So we rode that complex. Now we'd driven all night long. And we had to go down to the office and report in that morning too. So now the sun's coming up. We're driving around that damn complex. It's summertime and it's hot as hell. So I put the top down. We're sweating like crazy. Bob, where's? I said, well, hell, we can't find it. We can't find your car. Let's go to a payphone. He said, yeah. So we got to the payphone. He's standing there. I said, what's the matter? You don't have a quarter? And he said, no, I got a quarter. I said, well, why don't you call? He said, I don't know the number. So we're standing out in front of this.
He doesn't know the number to his house.
Well, he just moved in. He just got. That's the reason he had no car, because he was finishing up in Georgia, and the family and everything had moved down there, and way before cell phones. So his wife, of course, when you move, your wife takes care of all the phones, all electricity, and all that stuff. So
yeah,
his wife had the phone numbers, and he gave it. She, of course, gave it to Bob, but Bob being Bob, it got lost in the 600 miles from Macon to
yeah, out the top of that car.
So we're sitting there. What are we going to do? And now it's getting sun up, but fortunately, school had just started, so we hang out by the school bus there. And we see the kids coming out, and then all of a sudden there's my boy. Oh, great! There's his wife too, dropping the kid off at the school bus. And he goes over, and man, I got out there as quick as I could, because I know fingers were being pointed. They were all being pointed towards me. So I delivered your dad safely at home.
He had to hang out at the school to find his son, to find his house.
Exactly.
Hey, nowadays, two big jacked up dudes with the convertible top down at 6 a.m. at the school bus.
Yeah, with the beer in the back seat.
You're going to jail.
We'd left me long before your mom got there nowadays.
Oh, God, that's awesome.
What'd you get fired for, Jerry?
You
said you got fired from Fredstown. What'd you get fired for?
The truth is I wouldn't get color. I was told by Eddie Graham, don't do color, don't get color unless you talk to me. That was Jack and I's orders from Eddie Graham. Said, you guys sell too much, you sell way too good, you don't need the blood to go on top of it. So when I went up there, I come in from the Carolinas, who Crockett Senior at the time, and Eddie were good friends, and Eddie told him, well, he told Barnett in Atlanta, but Barnett had all these sub promoters, Fred Ward and all these other guys. And Barnett failed to tell these other guys that, Eddie don't want Briscoe's getting juice. So I got it, and then Fred said, well, it looks like I got no place for you if you can't get color. I said, okay. So the great thing about it, he ran Tuesdays and Thursdays, or Tuesdays and Wednesdays, shit towns, little spot show towns. Well, that just happened to be Miami and Tampa, to a town for Florida. So I would leave. I'd work Jimstown on Monday and come back to Atlanta on Friday. But in the meantime, instead of making those two shit towns or three shit towns, I would get to make Tampa, Miami, and Jacksonville, make a great payday, and then go back to Atlanta there
for 3 days work.
It was the greatest thing that had happened to me.
Wasn't Fred Ward the name of the guy that was the father of Beaver?
Yeah, it probably was. He was too rough on the Beaver. Past Freddie Ward, though. You remember Freddie Ward, right?
Oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir, I do. Yes, sir.
He had two son-in-laws, Ralph Freed and Leon Ogle.
Leon Ogle.
That eventually took over the business for him. But, man, and Columbus was a decent town, but the little, Albany, Georgia, the little skating rink towns that he ran like that, they were $40 payoff.
Yeah, I remember the championship belts. They had one in every town. The Albany champion, the Macon Columbus champion, the Macon champion. Everybody had a championship. Oh, that's funny.
Scott, who trained you when you first get in the business? What did your dad train you, or who actually trained you in the ring?
So the late great Tommy Rogers, one half of the Fantastics, he was in this territory, and he was here about a year, and I just let him know that I wanted to wrestle, and it was just in conversation, and he said, well, hey man, let's find out what time they put the ring up in Pensacola, and let's go over there and we'll just do some stuff in the ring. I'll teach you some stuff. And I said, okay, because he was already working, of course, and at an underneath spot on the card, but still he had been a couple of places, and he was about my age. And he said, and so we started doing that every Sunday. And then we did it about 3 weeks in a row. And he said, hey, look, Mobile, Alabama is an hour drive from Pensacola. He said, hey, do you want to ride with me? You can ride with me to Mobile. He said, you can ride back with your dad after the show, but you can ride over there and we can get in the ring. And I went, oh, great. So I was able to get in the ring a couple of times a week for about, I don't know, 8 or 10 weeks. And then I was in the locker room after we had worked out in the ring, and Tommy came walking in and saw my dad. And he goes, hey, Bob, hey, he's doing great. His timing is good. He can throw a drop kick, and he's saying it all right in front of me. And so I'm just eating it up, man. And so as soon as I couldn't wait to get in the car with my dad, man. As soon as we got in the car, I said, oh, hey, Dad, you heard what Tommy said? And Dad said, hey, pump the brakes there, son. He said, Tommy's the first match guy. He hasn't been in any main events yet. He's just getting started in the business himself. So I think I'd like to know from somebody else that you might be doing okay. And I went, yeah, okay. It was just his way of trying to squash me from wanting to do what I was going to do, no matter what he said. And then once he realized that I wasn't, look, we went to the beach almost every day, and that's just the truth. I was going to college in Georgia. They were living down here, and when I would come down to visit for spring break, we'd spend 2 weeks, and every morning they would wake up, work out, then they would go to the beach, and then they would come back, shower, drive to the town and have flip-flops on, and do the show, put the flip-flops back on, drive back, and do it the next day. And I'll never forget saying, Dad, y'all do this every day? And he started laughing and said, every day? And he goes, son, they have colleges here too. If you want to, he said, why don't you go home, sell everything you got, and come down here? Well, he didn't have to say that twice. I'm telling you right now, that was like in April, and in June I was living here, and I was 19 years. I've been here ever since. I bought a house here, raised my kids here. It's heaven, man. It just is. And but being able to go to the beach with him, and then he started opening up to me a lot more after that day that Tommy said that to him, and so then we'd be at the beach, and I'd say, hey, Dad, if he ever walked out in the water, I'd walk out to hound him and say, hey, on a hip toss, where are you hooking the guy? And I just had 1,000 questions, and he got to where he'd start answering them. And for the longest time, it would just be, oh boy, no, you stay with that college, and I think he finally realized Scotty ain't gonna shut up. So so just get him in the business. And they did a good, to bring me in. They literally, he was a heel. He had just turned heel. He had slapped Brad on TV a little bit earlier, and then finally, they get Brad down in Dothan, Alabama, literally one of the hottest towns they had at the time. It was every Saturday night, and they're beating Brad. Three dudes beating Brad to death, and everybody's looking back towards where the heels came out because they thought Bob's coming, and instead I did with the kendo stick, and I hit those guys each one time, and they were gone, and I just spun in the middle, big pop, and so I come back, and they said, hey, the heels want you to come over there and talk to them. Back then, hey man, that's a no. They said, no, put a hood on, do something. So I walk in, and they literally, this old school, Jerry, you can identify with it. They grabbed me and started just hitting me in the shin and the arm and just not hard, but bam, with a kendo stick. Just I was going, oh, but they're holding me, and finally they stopped and said, "Do you see how that feels?" And I said, "Yeah." And they said, "So now let us show you how to swing it." And I went, "You could have showed me that before the match. God dang, man."
Yeah,
So
you know what the dumbasses. If I want to get hit by something, I'm going to show somebody before. I don't care if they know how after.
Right. And so, needless to say, I swung it like I was Babe Ruth. But they only took one and were gone.
Who were the heels? Do you remember?
Yeah, it was Norvell and Dennis Condrey and Randy Rhodes. Those three that Brad had been working with them the whole, for a year or more. And so it was those three guys. Of course, I think the next week Dennis quit.
When he saw the bookings that your old man was doing the bookings there too, right?
Yeah, he said, "I got to work with that kid and train another Armstrong."
No thanks.
I'm
surprised you didn't have Big Bill Dromo or Cochran around at that time.
Man, so he used Daryl Cochran a lot. Like Daryl would come down here for a week and just take a vacation and just wear a mask and wrestle in the second match.
John, these were firemen that Bob had broken in with that fireman when Bob was doing the fireman's gig was Dromo and Cochran, and he got them both or they got him in the business.
I think they got him in, because Daryl Cochran was like an Olympic lifter. I mean, he crazy strong, and Big Bill Dromo, he lived in Smyrna, so 20 minutes from our house. So those were Daryl Cochran ended up being like you think about the people in your life that made a difference as you grew up, and the male figures other than my dad, Daryl Cochran, very father-like to us growing up and around a lot and very guiding us, hey boys, financially, if you do this, and always when I think back about it, as a kid, don't talk to me about that. Tell me who won the match, and you know what I mean. But then you go back and you go, wow, that dude made a difference in my life. And it's sad. It's sad that youth is wasted on the young.
No kidding. Were you in Pensacola before you? Because a lot of people came through there. Hollywood Tatum, I guess his dad was running the fairgrounds, and they got Michael Hayes in, and Hulk Hogan comes down there with Beefcake. Were you there during any of that?
No, that was
before you.
Yes, that was before the whole. I think the Fullers bought, and my dad and Jimmy they bought this territory. I want to say 78 or something like that, and the Fields brothers owned the whole thing, and they ended up buying it from them. And but prior to that was Mike the Hippie Boyette. And do you remember that name at all, Jerry?
Yeah, I remember Mike real well.
Yeah, and the Camel Clutch was the Hippie Hold.
Yeah,
and that was his finish. But yeah, Ricky Gibson, Young. Jerry, were you on the card that night that Ricky Gibson came to Atlanta for the first time? It was his first match, and they did the Bobby Shane was one of the top heels. And he had Winston was his manager, and whoever they had plugged some big name that was supposed to be there, and like from New York or whatever. They had plugged it for a week, and the guy didn't show up. And so Bobby Shane went out there and said, and it may all have been a gimmick, a booking ploy anyway, to make Ricky Gibson, because it did. So Bobby Shane, they had all the baby faces come out and line up in the ring, and they had Bobby Shane get a microphone and literally go from one to the other to the other. Oh, look, it's the Marietta Fireman, Bobby Dingling Armstrong. Hello, Mr. Armstrong. We're going to go ring the bell right now. I bet you do. Bet you want to. And so he would just cut a promo on every one of them until he got to Ricky Gibson, who was about 19 years old. And, just a skinny young kid standing in the ring and wouldn't even look up at him and look in his eyes. And he said, of all the men and the stature and the force and he just starts singing all these accolades and said, this is the guy. I'll wrestle you tonight. And so then, he just beats Ricky half to death in the match. And then Ricky small packages him 1, 2, 3. Ricky was made. He was a star right then. And so Ricky was a big star down here in those days. They look, they once my dad and those guys took over this territory, they did the same thing the Fields brothers had done. They just made their own stars. They didn't rely on bringing in big names. I mean, they brought in Austin Idol from Memphis, but they brought in Lord Humongous, was just a big, huge kid from Louisville, Kentucky. You know what I mean? And they made him a star. And so that's what they did with everybody here. And look, me and my brothers were small. I mean, Steve was thick and good size, but me and Brad were smaller guys. So it was kind of a small man territory prior to the Fullers taking it and buying it. So it just worked to have smaller guys here, like Adrian Street. He was really short. The Nightmares, Kenny Wayne, Danny Davis, they had a long run here because they could have tag matches. And there was so many family members here of my family.
Isn't it unique how different territories were different sizes, different things? Right. You know, so there were certain places tag teams weren't used. Certain places tag teams were the big draw. You know, certain places big guys were the thing. Certain territories wrestlers. You know, the amateur boys. You know, were the big things. It's just unique how every territory almost you could when you said that name, you knew the type of wrestler that would get over there.
Right, that's true. That's very true. And Matt. And, you know, here, look, on Sunday night, the show was in Pensacola. So you were at home all day. You left the house at 7 o'clock that night. The next day was Mobile. So you would leave at 2 in the afternoon, drive 4 hours. That was the longest trip. On Wednesday, it'd be Montgomery, 2.5 hour drive. Thursday might be off. Friday would be a spot show. And the spot show would be like a National Guard Armory or something on the way to Dothan on Saturday, because Dothan, we did TV that morning and then live that night. And back then, you guys know that the TVs, you do one TV and then you bicycle it and all those towns that you go to. But in Dothan, we shot it that morning and then aired it at 5:30 in the afternoon. And the matches started at 8:30. So from 5:30 to 6:30, you're eating dinner and watching the only wrestling show on television that week. And as soon as you ate your dinner watching wrestling, hey, let's go. And that town was always, I mean, there'd be 3,000 or 4,000 people every week. It was just crazy how good that town was. It was good to my family anyway.
that was an awesome territory, and the talent that sprung out of there. Like you said, they were all homegrown, which made it better. They were all in fashion in that old school method too of the wrestling. I'm so glad you brought up Ricky Gibson, because he gets overlooked in the list of great performers because Robert was so damn good, and
right.
That tag team Robert was in was just off the chart great. But Ricky's the one that started that. Ricky could work with anybody. And Ricky, like as you said, Ricky was not a big guy, but man, he could go out there with a big guy and sell that old southern sell, that old southern sell where there'd be riots. You know, I mean, because the guy's selling so much, you'd think he's getting killed, and then all of a sudden that southern fire come back, and here he goes, man, and everybody in the building standing. But he's overlooked as one of the greats, I think.
He was an awesome performer. He reminds me of you a little bit, Jerry. He reminded me of you. He's
mean.
Mean, yes. Yes. He said, hey, Scotty, you ever seen a match burn twice? And I said, I don't even know what you're talking about. He said, watch this. And he lit a match and immediately blew it out and stuck it on my arm. And I went, oh my God. He said, it burned, right? It burned twice. So it lit it. So God dang it,
Wait a minute, like I didn't do anything mean like that.
No, you didn't. You didn't. Only to Bruce Pritchard did you do something.
Only
like
to
that.
Bruce, yeah. Well, he deserved it though.
Have you guys had him on this podcast?
Oh, he's too big for us, man.
He keeps saying he will, but then he won't return a call.
Yeah. Oh, there you go.
Well, once he gets fired again, he'll come on.
Yeah, that's exactly how it works. Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I started doing a podcast too. As soon as they fired me, I had a guy reach out and go, hey, you ever think of doing a podcast? And I went, no, man, that ain't me. And he goes, no, please. So we talked a few minutes and he said, I'll take care of everything. So now Armstrong Avenue podcast every week.
All right.
Do you do it with somebody or do you do it by yourself?
Yeah, no, there's a guy on Twitter. He's Big Mike, the host, and he's a good dude, and he knows. He's like you guys. You send me the link, I hit it, and we talk. And so he lives in Georgia. He's been awesome. There's a guy started a network called IWN, the Independent Wrestling Network, and it's an app, and you go to it. It'd be like all the indie shows, if they want their show on this app, all they got to do is contact the guy, and the guy puts the show on the app. For the wrestlers, the indie wrestlers, they can go on there and get booked or do their bookings and say, here's the dates I'm available, and then go off to the side and make their it's a cool concept, and that's who backs my podcast.
And so it's amazing. Bruce and Conrad pretty much, I don't know if they invented it, but they made this whole genre.
Bruce invented it.
Yeah. We always get on to Bruce about he's inventing everything, but he really did with the podcast. I mean, when Bruce got hot, I mean, it was unbelievable.
Yeah, Brian's on their network, on their whatever ad-free shows.
Yeah,
Brian Road Dogg. He's on there doing. I don't know if he can. He just got hired back, so I don't know if he's still doing it or. Don't you still work there, Jibble?
I kind of, yeah. I'm not exactly sure. yeah.
I'm like you, Scott. I'm unemployed.
It depends on the week.
Right. I'm gonna go back to my Uber as soon as I hang up with you guys.
They call me, I work. They don't call me, I don't. So
yeah, fair enough. My next door neighbor, he said, in all the years I've lived in this house for 20 something years, he said, in all the years, I've never seen you so much. Are you not in the wrestling business anymore? And I said, yeah, no, it's, that kind of ran its course, I guess. I said, at least that's what they tell me. And he said, well, I'll tell you this, your yard's never been so well kept and your cars have never been so clean.
I know the feeling, man.
Well, I read on the internet, which is always right, by the way. I know it is.
Yeah.
Are you working with Impact now?
No, I went and did a weekend with them and did one of their. I didn't. I took a referee shirt because I didn't know if I was going to referee or not. I just, the deal, take your gear. And even at my age, I still took my gear. And they said, hey, Scott, we're going to shoot our TVs tomorrow night. But tonight we were wondering if you'd want to referee the women's championship, their Impact championship. And I went, oh, dude, I'd be honored. And then in my head, I'm thinking, oh, I haven't refereed in 9 or 10 years. And I start thinking, man, can I do that? Dude, you ain't seen nobody stretch so much before I walked out there. And them girls went about 20 minutes and had about 30 false finishes. So I'm down, up, down, up. I was gassed when I came back. But look, they treated me like royalty. The whole, from Scott Demore runs the show. He's got a really awesome staff and his writers. And honestly, I have to say, they treated me like a king. After the 2 days, and getting home and talking, it's just in my world right now. It's not the fit for me. So it's the deal before I started. I said, hey, so can you give me a bunch of dates? He said, well, why don't we date before we go steady? And I went, I like the way you said that. And so I told him, say, hey, dude, it ain't really breaking up if we never went steady. Right? And so look, the door was left wide open. Please, anytime. And it's just me right now. It's just, look, I've been around this a long, long time. And if I was half my age, I'm sure I would have jumped in with both feet. But I got a grandson starting soccer, and he's 4 years old. Hey, before we go any further, let me tell you this one story. He's 4 years old, and he's my only grandchild. And he calls me Pop. He's Pop. I got a baseball game. It's 4-year-old T-ball. And so half of them are chasing butterflies. The other half's digging a hole at first base. And so it comes time for their bat. And it's the first inning of the first at-bat of the entire season. And I've been working with him in the backyard, and we've ran the bases, and we've done it all to get ready for this first game. And the coach goes, okay, who wants to bat first and third? The whole team raises their hand, and my grandson's named Grayson. Okay. And he said, Grayson, you start us off. First batter of the season. Let's go. he knocks the crap out of the ball and runs straight to the pitcher's mound and turns around and starts waving there.
That's
He got that wrestling blood in him already.
That's right.
Yes.
That's right.
The whole bench of the coaches are all going, no, first base. But it literally set the tone of where I needed to be for the rest of the season. I didn't miss a game, and I laughed. Oh, 4-year-old T-ball is the best, man.
Scott, one time me and Ron were at some signing or something. It wasn't about a year ago, and they put us on in like a beach hotel. And that morning they had like all these like 4 or 5-year-old kids doing karate class. So you had them all lined up, and the instructor was like very serious. He was doing all this stuff, and there was not one kid doing it with him. They're picking up seashells. They're throwing rocks in the ocean.
Yes.
It was so. I'm sitting on the balcony watching and Ron calls me. He goes, "Are you watching this?" I said, "Yes, I
am." And that dude's probably getting about $75 a kid, right?
Exactly. Yeah, and the parents are so proud their kids taking karate classes.
Right. Yeah. That's the truth. Oh, I love it. I love it.
You worked for a guy that I never got to work for that I wanted to. In fact, he said he was going to book me, but then he lost his territory, which is kind of a joke between me and him because he goes, "I still got some bookings for you." Every time I see him, he tells me that. Is Jim Cornette.
Oh, yeah.
Smoky Mountain. Yes. How'd you like working up with Cornette in Smoky Mountain?
Dude, he's Jim Cornette. You know what I mean?
Yes.
I've had people, since I've started doing indies again, I've had people say, "Yeah, what do you think of Jim Cornette?" And I go, "Hey, look, if you understand Jimmy before you walk in the room, there will never be an issue, and you will always laugh. You will always have a good time." And that's the way he was. Look, he was always good to my family, and he used us all. And he had a vision. I mean, he really did. He had a vision for Smoky Mountain Wrestling, and he's the only guy in my career that sat me down and said, "Okay, I want you to wear a mask, and we want to call you this, and you will do this for an entire year, and we will give you wins on TVs, and you'll get wins in the first match of all the live events." He said, "And the entire time that you're getting these wins under this mask, we're going to be building your father as the commissioner, and we're going to build him bigger than any top baby face. And a year from now, then it'll be me against your dad in a cage." And look, back then there was a lot of long-term booking. I just had never been a part of any of it, and so nowadays it's week to week. but back then, to be sat down and told, "Here's what we're going to do." And then it actually, because, come on, man, a year from now, who knows what anybody's going to be doing. And that's what he did, man. He did it. And we drew big houses along the way because he would put my dad and him in there, and I'd just be early on the card. And then, bam, we made some money. And then after that, after I took the mask off, then my brother Steve and I did tag teaming and had a little run and worked with the Harris boys a bunch of times. I know y'all know those dudes. They're the best, man. Yeah. And so
I love Ronnie and Donnie.
Oh, dude, I just saw him at Ric Flair's last match. I actually timed that show, and so I can't tell you which one it was, Ronnie or Donnie, but I can tell you it was one of them.
They're twins,
Yes. One of them is the manager of the building at the Nashville Auditorium. Yes. And so we walked in. I was talking to somebody, and all of a sudden just grabbed me from behind and just started shaking me. And when he sat me down, I went, "Yeah, I remember that. I knew who it was. I knew it was one of you guys." I said, "Hey, dude, you remember the first time we ever worked with you guys in Knoxville? And you picked me up and body slammed me, and I hit so hard and went, 'You don't have to do that. I'll help you.'" And I said, and then we came back, and I said, "Hey, man, I'm 180 pounds. I'll go up with you. All you got to do is turn me over, man. You don't have to really slam me." And immediately he went, "Oh, no, that was Donnie. He's not here. He'll be here tomorrow."
That's great. That's great.
And then we had a show. We had a run with Cornette's Heavenly Bodies, Tom Pritchard and Jimmy Backlund. And so that we were on last. Well, Ronnie and Donnie were on like mid show, and they immediately got out of there. So we stayed in Hazard, Kentucky. Everybody stayed at the Daniel Boone Inn. I don't even know if it's still there, but the Daniel Boone Inn, and it was just the old, what you would imagine, hotel, nothing special about it, rooms on the outside. And me and Steve pull up, and our headlights are shining right at the last door of the hotel. So, the people had their curtains shut, but all of a sudden the door opens up, and it's one of those twins with all that hair, and he is in his tidy whitey underwear, and he's just starts waving at us. And as he's waving, the other brother shoves the shit out of him, slams the door, and now out in the parking lot with our high beams right on him and all that. Oh my God. I told him, me and Steve, when we were working that territory, we lived in Pensacola. So, some of those shows, man, it's 8 hours to Knoxville. And so we did a lot of driving from here to go up there. And so it started getting expensive. Not only just, gas wasn't that expensive then, but still the cost of living and us going and having to live in hotels. And Steve said, hey man, why don't we just map it out and take our tent and stay in the state park that's the most centralized to all our shows? And I went, oh dude, that's brilliant. So we did, and we took our rods and reels. And so the first show, we drove to the first show, and all our camping in the back and bags and everything looked like we were about to lose or leave town. And he said, and the Harris twins gave us the most crap about, you guys are doing what? Oh my God, I can't. That's the stupidest thing. Well, we set up camp in the dark that night, woke up the next morning next to a beautiful lake, and went and we started catching fish that morning, just having a great time. So we get to the town the next night, and we said, man, we start telling our stories in the locker room. Man, we caught all these fish on. And they said, hey, Ronnie, what do you think, man? We go buy a tent and we can camp with the Armstrongs. And we said, hell no, man. No, y'all ain't camping with us. I had great times with those guys, man. They were good dudes, really good dudes.
Yeah, I don't know why they didn't stay around longer. They had such a good look. They were good workers and good guys. Good workers.
Yeah, they were good workers. That whole Smoky Mountain, too. They didn't use a bunch of they used huge stars like on their big shows in Knoxville. But look, we were doing Barberville, Kentucky, and at the high school, and we were doing towns like that. Jellicoe, Tennessee, right across the mountain, an hour from Knoxville. We're doing small towns, but they were drawing, and we did good. You know what I mean? At Cornet, he did good, I guess.
Yeah, Jimmy just had a vision, like you said, of what he wanted to do, and he wouldn't let any of the boys or the BS around that surround their business to interfere with what that vision was. And he kept doing it, and it was great. Smoky Mountain was one of the well-known territories.
It's funny, Jerry, because even in today's time, if you went back and watched one after the storylines, they're awesome. Yeah. They work.
Yeah.
But as far as working with Cornette, dude, I've seen him want a fist fight. I've seen him tell, come on. Losing his mind, taking his glasses off.
That's the funniest thing in the world, too, to see Jim Cornette wanting to fight somebody. I've witnessed it a couple of times. I witnessed it in a production meeting at WWE. With him and Kevin Dunn, and it's the funniest thing you'd ever want to see.
Yeah, I've seen him cuss the guy in the Wendy's drive-through so bad.
Damn, man.
Yes, because there wasn't any bacon on his Baconator, or I don't know, something. Dude, he is a trip, man. But I can't, for me personally, and I feel like I can speak for my family. I can't say anything bad about him, man, because he if he said a dollar figure, we got that dollar figure, and he never duped us. He never lied to us. And in the wrestling business, hey man, you go a career, and somebody says, "Hey, you never told me a lie." Come on, man, that's a lie.
So, exactly. Exactly.
He just really. I listen to his podcast now and just lie. My son doesn't know him. My son only knows of him through me and my brothers and my dad. And my son will come home and say, "Dad, did you hear Cornette's pie?" I'll say, "No, but tell me when it is. I'll listen to it." And I can't help but laugh because it's awesome, man. It's
and
Jimmy.
It's a truth. It's a truth according to Cornette, and it's
right.
It's usually
yes.
true.
Perspective is reality, so it is reality.
Yeah, I had a promoter one time tell me, he said, I got you booked, and if I don't, you can call me a liar the rest of your life. I called him a liar the rest of his life.
I love it.
Those guys, some of those guys just had no scruples. They just lied to you, and they're lying.
They're still out there. They're still out there. Yeah, Jibble. They're still out there. I promise you. I've run into one or two of them already. Oh yes. I mean, I got released at the beginning of January, and so I've taken a number of indie bookings, and for the most part, everything's been awesome, but there's still a couple of those that what you're talking about that just you just go, dude, yeah, it's not like that.
No, Scott, isn't it wonderful though when you do get that one promoter that's a good promoter, and you look and you're sitting in that dressing room, everything about it has that old school feeling.
Yes,
and you do run into there's a few around the country that that has that attitude toward bringing the old school back. But then you walk into some of these places and, wow, what am I doing there? How did I let myself get booked into this?
Yeah, I was on an indie show. Two things happened on this indie show. One, there were not anywhere near enough chairs in the locker room, and so I just look, man. If somebody offered me a chair, I would have taken it. Nobody did, and it's all 20-year-old dudes, 25-year-old dudes. Hey, man, hey, that's their right. They don't have to offer me anything. So I kind of got off to the corner and did my own thing to get dressed. But another guy had taken, those like those camp chairs that you just plop open and have a seat, like you go to your kid's ball game or whatever. He had brought one. I said, "Hey, man, whose chair is that?" And he said, "It's mine." I said, where did you? He said, "I brought it from home." I said, "You're the smartest man in this whole locker room." Yeah. I went the next day and bought one. I thought, you know what? I'm not going to be stuck in that ever again. I will have a chair. But the other thing was this guy was talking about he was going to do a dive, and he was going to do 10 dives in his matches. I mean, I'll do this dive and I'll do that dive. And somebody went, "Hey, do you think that's too many dives?" And he went, "Well, I'm going to tell you right now, I've never done a dive that the people didn't react." And I said, if you pull the guy's hair, you'll get a reaction too. And he just kind of looked at me like, "What?" And I thought, this guy doesn't get it. You know what I mean? He's going to do 10 dives and be in a body cast. And I'm going to start coming up and have JBL pull my hair back down, and the people will lose their minds. You know what I mean? It's the art of the work. And work, right? Being the key word. Work.
And it depends on the reaction. If you walk out the crowd, anybody, and you just grab the microphone and go, "You suck," you're gonna get people that boo you.
Yes.
That doesn't mean you're over, and that doesn't mean you have heat.
Right. Yeah, it just sounded like 10 wasted dives when the kid was saying it. I thought, man.
Hey, I'll tell you something that I know you'll understand. Pat McAfee, when I went up to WWE, and I'd met him several times, but he's sitting there in a chair, he's working, and when I walk onto the set, he gets up and wants to give me his chair. Out of respect.
Yeah, there you go, man.
And I thought, man, I told him, I said, you're an all-pro. You played in the top league, and you were like the best. You're like an all-pro in that league.
Yes.
And he goes,
best of the best, yeah.
And he was just like, no. And I said, please. And I wouldn't take it, of course, but
right.
What a cool dude.
Yeah, the respect.
He's a massive star. He just got signed a deal for $30 million a year with FanDuel or whatever it was.
Oh, that.
He's a couple-time All-Pro in the NFL, and he offers me his chair. And I thought, this guy's righteous.
Good,
this guy's
good dude, right? Yep, good human being. Yeah, and
it's just amazing, that sometimes some young guy, it doesn't even occur to him.
Right. Yeah. No, dude, I can't imagine. If I talking about getting bumped up to a first class seat, even towards the end of my run with WWE, I'd get bumped up to a first class seat. There wasn't one time that even if it was Fit or Dean Malenko or Arn or any of, if they didn't get bumped up, I offered them my seat every time. And it's just what you do, man. You know what I mean? It is. It's just what you do. And one time I remember a veteran getting on the plane and me watching, and one of the young guys had got, you know, back then, and I don't know how it is now, if you're a champion, you get a first class seat, and young dude gets the title. I don't care if you're the champion or not. You see Jerry Brisco walk by, you offer him your seat. That's just the way I feel. It's a shame that that's lost. And it's only because you can't pop the shit out of somebody and hit them in the mouth.
Amen, bro.
Because if you could do that, it'd be a little more, take the seat, sir, please. If they ever saw Jerry Brisco take Bruce Pritchard flip over on a dead gum sofa,
they'd give him a seat
at a 5-star hotel.
They'd give him the whole row.
Scott, you were part of a great angle. You're part of the build up to a WrestleMania they called Yeselmania, right, with Daniel Bryan.
Yes.
I mean, that to me was just, it was one thing. You talk about people not getting it. Everybody thought the company was burying Daniel Bryan. Everybody thought they were doing, all this. How could they bury this guy? We got him on 5 segments every show. It's not exactly like we're burying him. He's going to go over at the big show. But you had that great heel run as a referee.
That was that was prior to the beginning of that. That was another long-term booking thing that I was involved in. Just a lot. We did it in 2 months instead of we did it in the WrestleMania build-up, I guess. Hunter came to me and just said, "Hey, Scott, we're gonna." I was already into my 50s and my hair, needless to say, very gray, and he just said, "Hey, so we're gonna want you to be a producer, but while you're learning how to do that and go come into all these meetings, we're gonna write you off of TV, and we're gonna make you the heel referee, and we're gonna do it with Daniel Bryan, and there'll be a down the line we'll do a fast." I mean, it was all calculated, and I just went. In my mind, I'm thinking, man, this to be at the end of your on-camera career, you know what I mean? And for a guy like me who literally has loved this business since youth, to end his career in front of the camera as a referee involved in a storyline to be written, because at the end of the whole deal, Hunter says, "I just can't trust you anymore. You're fired." And they took me off of TV. So to be able to be written in a storyline to end up transforming into the producer behind the scenes, it was, man, for me career wise, it was felt storybook. You know what I mean? So as far as the people, oh my God, dude, screwing Daniel Bryan, they were so behind him. It was
unreal.
Oh my God. So screwing him was like, I mean, on Twitter, I'd get, if I see you somewhere, I'm going to beat the shit out of you. You just laugh at that and think, God, I need to watch what I'm doing and where I'm going by myself.
There's nothing greater than a heel referee. Nick Patrick was a great heel referee. And it's just like the honest, like when he told I can't remember who it was. He told me, "Hey man, the jig is up. They know." Oh yeah. Yes. You're the biggest crook in the world, which I appreciate greatly.
Yeah, it was fun, man. It was fun to be involved. I'll have to admit the paychecks did rise up just a little bit during that run, so I definitely appreciate it. My kids appreciated it, that's for sure. But career-wise, I truly did. It was awesome. And Daniel Bryan, look, man, I mean, you guys know he's straight up good dude. And
and that was one of the greatest builds ever. You had the right guy. Daniel Bryan was the right guy, man. He was it still is such a great worker and such the underdog character that he's constantly getting screwed. Then you find out even the referee's crooked against Daniel. I mean, it's
everything stacked against him.
Oh. I just remember the production meeting at that WrestleMania, and all they were worried about was make sure we get the crowd angle right. Because when 80-something thousand people are chanting, "Yes, this is going to be one of the greatest moments in wrestling history," and it was.
Yeah. Yes, it was. it's funny to be able to see a guy. You know, look, if you look at Daniel Bryan, when you're at the gas station and you don't know him, well, as men size each other up, you look over, well, I'd beat that guy's ass in a heartbeat. You know what I mean? And then fast forward to him leaving the gas station and going to the biggest stadium in the city and standing in the middle and going, yes, yeah, and seeing 80,000 do the same thing. You just go, I live in a crazy world, man. Yes, and I love it.
Yeah, it's such a fun thing when you see something like that play out, and you're when you're a step ahead of the people, and you know, and Jerry both know what I'm talking about. When you do it right, and you know you're right, you're thinking, okay, if I can just not screw this up, this is gonna be awesome.
It's gonna work. It's like the heat in a tag match when you've beat that baby face down, and you got the people, and the guy literally dives to tag his babyface partner. That pop tells you how good the heat was, right?
Right.
That pop tells you we got him, man. I love that. I love it. Yeah, it was dude, Daniel Bryan was awesome. He and Kane did the whole yes, no, what were they, Team Hell No or something like that?
Oh, and he was so entertaining. He was great as the underdog. He was great in the comedy with Kane, which, by the way, Kane has range like hardly anybody. He can be a monster. He can be your comedian. He can be your mayor.
Yeah, or your dentist.
Or your dentist.
Or your mayor.
Yeah, the mayor for sure. Yeah, it's really cool. You know, you think, oh man, that guy's an asshole. I hate to see him win the title, or I hate to see him get a good break in the business. And then you see Daniel Bryan do that, and you think, hey man, the good guy really did win, you know, all the way around, because he's a really good human being. And so for him to have all that success, and even now, you know, with AEW, he's still successful. So it's really cool for him. I'm glad for him, because he is.
Yeah, those are all your really feel good moments about our business, when you see a guy that defeating all odds. I mean, you know, there's no way you look at Daniel Bryan, like you said, at a gas station. There's no way you could ever picture him in front of 85,000 people. Yes.
Right. Ever.
Hey, Scott, I know we're running out of time. Before we go, I want to ask you about Road Dogg. You know, Road Dogg's like Brad, one of the most entertaining guys in the world. And all of a sudden, Road Dogg gets out there with Billy on, I think it was Shotgun Saturday Night or something, like whatever it was, and cuts this really entertaining promo that all of us had seen him do in the back forever. Were you surprised that his personality came out like that on television?
So, so what I was surprised at, I'd been in the business long enough to realize that just because you could run your mouth didn't mean you'd get a microphone. And so I was surprised at him getting the opportunity to do that. Surprised at him being a nut job? No, never. I mean, literally, I went to a high school reunion years ago, and the first thing this one guy says to me is, hey, whatever happened to your little brother, man? We were in Little League, and he was always the one to run up and kick us in the shin and then take off running, and you guys wouldn't let us beat him up because he was like 4 or 5 and we were 12. And he said, whatever happened to him? I figured he'd end up in jail. And I said, well, he ended up doing really well, but I think he did have a detour or two in jail. But so he was always like, me and my wife start dating, and Brian was like 13 and calls from another kid's house and said, hey, ride down the road to this one house on a canal. He said, you got to see this, just walk around to their backyard. And I said, dude, I'm 22, I'm probably 24. I said, dude, I'm not just walking into some dude's backyard. And he goes, no, the gate will be open. Him and his buddies had BMX bikes on top of the guy's boathouse that was like 3 stories high. And they're riding the bicycles off the boathouse and doing flips in the air and landing in the water. And I'm waiting on him to come up going, oh my God, man. But that was him. You know what I mean? To be able to see his personality be showcased, and for him not to, you know, Brad was that way in the dressing room nonstop too. But as soon as Brad got in front of the camera, he became the, 1970s talker. yes, sir, you know, Mr. Soley, I'm going to do this. And he couldn't be Brad. And Brian has never had that trouble. And even now still does not. And, so, yeah, it was just the fact that they gave him the airtime to do that. And then, you know, once they did it, dude, I'll never forget as soon as they started giving him the opportunity to come to the ring and do you didn't know your ass better cost. Once they started that, well, my daughter was 6 and my son was 4 when that all was happening. And so we would, you know, I wanted to watch him on TV, watch Brian's show. And so I would have to hold the channel change, the thing, and hit mute as soon as he started talking, because I didn't want my 6-year-old daughter hearing that, if we got 2 words for you, suck at, you know what I mean? And so,
Daddy, what that mean?
Right. And so then it got to the point where she starts 2nd grade and she reads me, you know, people hold up the sign, 420, dog, 420, suck it, and all. And she said, Dad, why are they holding up that poster? They couldn't. After that, I couldn't watch wrestling anymore. I said, dang, Brian, y'all. I'd already begged him. I said, look, you say I got 2 words for you, and then you say suck it. I said, can you just not say that? Maybe let Billy say that part so I don't have to explain everything to my kids. And he would laugh so hard. He goes, yeah, man, I'll never forget. I was at his house when he went to the Jibble. I know you remember these checks, and Jerry played it too. He went and got his very first pay-per-view check when he was when him and Billy were doing that. And back then, those checks were difference makers. And I literally, I looked at
those checks paid the rent. Those checks bought your car. Those checks were,
and I
those checks were everything.
When he came walking in with it and threw it over to the side, I said, what's that? And he said, this is my first pay-per-view check. Take a look. And I just remember opening it and going, hey, dude, you got to buy another house. he just started laughing. I said, no, man, you need to start buying a bunch of houses. I'm telling you right now. And he tells me all the time, I wish I would have listened to you that day, man.
I was on a panel with him the other day. Not the other day. I'm bad with time. Whenever it was, a few months ago. It was me, him, Billy, and Ron. And they asked him a question. And in the middle of his answer, he went into like 4 different jokes that were non sequiturs to anything else. He would like this, he would that, he would that, he would that. It was one of the most entertaining things I'd ever seen. You know, he's obviously really smart, but he just has a brain that races different than us.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. Sometimes you wish it would just race away.
Race away.
No, he's hey, look, he when he turned 15, I bought him his first car. Brad had bought Steve his first car when Steve turned 15, not 16. And so I couldn't be out because me and Brad were wrestling. So we were making a little money at the time. And so I bought Brian his first car. And dude, if you don't think I hadn't held it over his head since he was 15 years old, when he was making all that money, I said, dude, buy me. He bought my mom a car, my dad a car. I said, dude, I bought you your first car, man. He may have bought me lunch. That's about it.
That's the brother.
Was it a nice lunch or was it like
fast
food?
Listen,
Mickey D's.
It wasn't good as a Cadillac, I'll tell you that.
Well, Scott, hey, thanks so much for coming on the show. I've been looking forward to having you all. You know, we're fried chicken buddies, we're candy buddies. We're
for
just
sure,
buddies.
For sure, man. I always, as we went our different ways of COVID and all that stuff and the lockdown, I always wondered, how did we not ever get a sponsorship from Popeye's Fried Chicken or Sour Patch Kids? Because, dude, we were tweeting about it every production meeting with us with candy and eating candy and tagging them, and they just ghosted the crud out of us.
They never responded one time. I never got a free piece of chicken from them.
No, never. And now they've built one like a mile from my house, dude, of Popeyes. Oh, it's heaven. It is heaven. But yeah, hey man, I really have. I look forward to this. Look, anytime I get to see either one of you guys is always a bonus. Brad, JBL, I saw you, I know, WrestleCon, WrestleMania weekend, you and Ron, and to be able to sit and laugh with you guys for just a couple of minutes, man. It's this business, the best business on earth. You can get out of a car with a dude in 1974 and in 2022 run back into him, and it's like you just got out of the car with him. And that's the best part of this business. I love the brotherhood and sisterhood. It's just fantastic. And I appreciate you guys having me on. I really do, but I appreciate it more that it was with the two of you guys, man.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you very much, brother.